My name is Beatrice, and the story I'm about to tell you, well, it's not an easy one. My husband, Walter, he always had this little habit. He never liked calling ahead to say when he was arriving home. It's something he's done ever since we were young. He says he loves to see the surprise in my eyes when he walks through the door early. He claims they light up, and I still run to hug him as if we were two newlyweds, even though we've been together for 42 years. Oh, dear, before I get to the heart of it, I suppose I should explain. Telling this story isn't easy, but if you're listening, perhaps it might help someone else. Your support, just by hearing an old woman's story, is very important. That day, it was December 21st, my Walter decided to end his shift as a ride-share driver early. Our little coastal town was quiet, and he told me later he was just thinking about getting home to start preparing for the holidays with me. Christmas has always been our special time. Even more so now that we're alone most of the time, ever since Nathan, our only son, married Amber and moved away. He told me he ran into his friend Roger, another driver who always parks near the terminal. "Leaving already, Walter?" Roger asked him. "But it's only 4 o'clock. "I already met my quota for the day, my friend," my Walter replied, putting his cell phone in his shirt pocket. "And I want to surprise my wife." Roger apparently laughed and slapped him on the back. 42 years married and still with surprises. That's the way to do it, Walter. So, he got into his car, that 2016 Nissan Versa he bought a few years ago when he had to quit construction. His poor body just couldn't take carrying cement bags and climbing scaffolding anymore, not at 62. He said he drove slowly through the streets, just thinking about everything he and I had built together. Our house, it's small but it's decent, and it took us almost 30 years to finish. Walter laid every single brick himself. We saved every dollar to buy materials, with me doing laundry and ironing for other folks while he worked double shifts whenever he could find the work. As he turned the corner of our street, he told me he noticed something strange. There was a car he didn't recognize parked right in front of our house. A black Honda Civic, looked brand new. And right next to it, Nathan's truck. I wasn't expecting to see him until Christmas Eve, 3 days later. Walter parked half a block away and walked slowly toward the house. He said something just didn't feel right. Nathan never visits us without warning, and certainly not with some strange car that wasn't his. As he got closer, he heard laughter coming from inside. Men's laughter, women's laughter, glasses clinking. But what stopped my poor husband dead in his tracks was seeing me, Beatrice, sitting all alone on our little bench by the entrance, with my head down, my shoulders shaking. I was crying my eyes out. He approached me without making a sound, his heart just pounding. "Beatrice, my love, what's wrong?" he whispered, crouching in front of me. I looked up, so surprised and scared I nearly jumped out of my skin. My eyes were all red and swollen. "Walter!" I exclaimed in a low voice, trying to wipe my tears away. "I wasn't expecting you so early. What's going on? Why are you crying?" he insisted, taking my hands in his. He told me later they were ice cold, despite the afternoon heat. I glanced nervously toward the half-open door of our house, where all that laughter and lively conversation was still pouring from. "It's nothing. Just..." I began to say, but I stopped when we both heard our son's voice. "Come on, Mom. Don't be like that. It's just one signature." Nathan shouted from inside, using that awful tone he gets when he loses his patience. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Miriam came especially to help us with the papers. Nathan's in-laws. In our house. Papers. Signatures. My husband told me a chill ran right down his spine. "What papers is he talking about?" Walter asked me, lowering his voice even more. I squeezed his hands so tightly, and he saw the fear in my eyes, a fear he told me he'd never seen in me before. "They arrived 2 hours ago," I explained, my voice just breaking. "Nathan, Amber, and her parents. They brought some beers, started making toasts. I thought it was just a normal visit, that they wanted to spend time with us for the holidays. But then I stopped, because we heard footsteps approaching the door. Walter quickly stood up and moved to one side, hiding himself, mostly, behind the porch column. The door opened all the way, and there was Nathan. At 35, our son looks so much like Walter, but there's something in his eyes I just don't like anymore. Something that got worse when he met Amber and her family. "Mom, stop making this difficult," he said, not even seeing Walter. "We just need you to sign the transfer and the power of attorney, and we'll all be calmer. The house will be safe with us. Not with you two who are already old." My husband froze when he heard those words. Transfer. Power of attorney. Our house. What transfer, Nathan? Walter asked, stepping out from his hiding place. Our son was so startled he nearly fell over. His face went from red to white in a second. "Dad. No. I didn't know you were here," he stammered, looking nervously back into the house. "How long have you been here?" "Long enough," Walter replied, and I could feel the anger starting to boil in him. "What is this about a transfer and a power of attorney? What are you asking your mother to sign?" Before Nathan could answer, Amber appeared right behind him. An attractive woman, I suppose, but with a smile that just never reaches her eyes. "Mr. Walter, what a pleasant surprise," she exclaimed, with such false joy. "We were just talking about you." Behind her, two more figures appeared. Mr. Harold Ledesma and Mrs. Miriam. He was a bulky man with a neatly trimmed mustache and expensive clothes. She was a thin woman with dyed blonde hair, just loaded with jewelry that looked too heavy for her neck. "Mr. Walter, a pleasure to see you," Mr. Harold said, extending his hand to my husband. Walter didn't take it. Instead, he just stared hard at our son. "Nathan, I asked you a question. What papers are you asking your mother to sign?" My son exchanged a quick glance with his father-in-law before answering. "Dad, it's not a big deal. We just wanted to secure the family's future," he said, trying to sound so reasonable. "With your job as a driver and your age, we're worried you might lose the house if something happens to you. If you put it in our name." "In your name?" Walter interrupted, and he sounded short of breath. "This house? The one I built brick by brick with my own two hands? The one your mother and I paid for with 40 years of hard work?" "Mr. Walter, I think you're misinterpreting the situation," Mr. Harold intervened, with this condescending tone that made my husband clench his fists. "We just want to protect the family assets. My son-in-law and I know influential people who can ensure everything is in order." "In order," Walter repeated, trying so hard to stay calm. "This house is already in order. I have the deed. All the papers are up to date. I don't need anyone to protect it." "Dad, you're being stubborn," Nathan said, and I could tell he'd been drinking from the brightness in his eyes and the slight wobble in his stance. "You're not young enough to be driving all day. What will happen when you can't work anymore? How will you keep the house?" I put my hand on Walter's arm then, squeezing it gently, just silently begging him not to lose his temper. "Your mother and I have planned our retirement for years," Walter replied, as calmly as he could. "We have our savings, my pension, and this house is completely paid off. We don't need anyone to help us with what's ours." "Oh, Mr. Walter," Mrs. Miriam chimed in with a smile that was supposed to be motherly. "We just want what's best for everyone. Imagine if you put the house in Nathan and Amber's name. You could continue to live here without worrying about anything. They would take care of everything, the taxes, the maintenance, and you would just have to enjoy your old age in peace." Amber finished the thought, looking right at me. "Mrs. Beatrice, you understood perfectly just a few minutes ago. Why are you hesitating now?" I just looked down, so ashamed. And my Walter, he saw it. He told me later he felt something break inside him. He knew. He knew they had been pressuring me, for hours maybe, taking advantage of me being alone. "Nobody is signing anything," Walter said, his voice firm, and he stepped right between them and me. "And I'm going to ask all of you to leave my house. Right now." Mr. Harold's friendly expression just vanished, replaced with this barely hidden disgust. I think you're making a mistake, Mr. Walter. We just want to help. If you want to help, Walter replied, looking him straight in the eye, you can start by respecting our decisions and our property. Nathan took a step toward his father, his face flushed with anger or alcohol, or both. Dad, you're ruining everything, he claimed. Mr. Harold can help us. He knows a lot of important people. If the house is in our name, we can even get a loan to expand it so we can all live better. And just like that, Walter understood. So that was it. They wanted to use our house, our only asset, as collateral for their business, or their debts. Nathan, look at me, Walter said, his voice perfectly controlled. This house is not for sale. It's not for loan. And it's not being put in anyone's name but your mother's and mine. And now, please, you and your guests, leave. There was such a tense moment, nobody said a thing. Then, Mr. Harold let out this short, dry laugh. Let's go, family. It seems Mr. Walter needs time to think things over more calmly, he said, gesturing toward the door. We'll talk another day, when he's more receptive. Amber took Nathan by the arm, who was looking at his father with this mixture of rage and shame. Dad, you're making a mistake, he told him. We just want to help you. If you want to help us, Walter replied, start by respecting your parents and what we've built. The four of them went back inside to get their things. Walter took that moment to speak quietly to me. Beatrice, did they pressure you a lot? Did you sign anything? He asked, his voice so worried. I just shook my head. No, but they were so insistent. They told me it was for the best. That we'd be protected if something happened to you. My voice just broke. Forgive me, Walter. For a moment, I almost believed them. He held me so tightly then, feeling my whole body shaking against his. He told me later, in that instant, he swore that no one would ever make me cry like that again. Not even our own son. A few minutes later, the four of them came out of the house. Mr. Harold gave Walter a look that was supposed to be friendly, but it was dark. Think about it, Mr. Walter. The offer still stands. We just want what's best for everyone, he said, extending his hand again. Again. Walter didn't take it. Thank you for your concern, he replied, his voice dry. But my wife and I know perfectly well how to manage our own affairs. When they finally left, Nathan paused for a moment before getting into his truck. Dad, Mom. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad, he said. But he didn't sound sorry, not really. I was just thinking about everyone's future. Nathan. Son, Walter said, and he suddenly sounded so tired. Your mother and I decide our future. And I hope you never try something like this again. He nodded. But I saw it in his eyes, too. This wasn't over. As we watched them drive away, a terrible sense of unease settled in my chest. Something told us this was just the first battle of a war we hadn't asked for, but one my Walter was willing to fight to the end. I took Walter's hand, and we went into our house together. On the kitchen table were the half-finished beer bottles and some papers. Walter picked them up, and his heart just skipped a beat. They were drafts. Drafts of a power of attorney and a property transfer, already on a notary's letterhead. They had this all planned, Walter murmured, showing the papers to me. I looked at them in horror and just hugged him tightly. Oh, Walter, I'm so scared, I confessed. The way they talk to us, as if we're two useless old people who can't decide for ourselves anymore. He held me and kissed my forehead. Don't worry, my love, he said, with a confidence I know he didn't fully feel. I won't let anyone take what's ours. I promise you. As he held me, he looked around our small living room. Every corner of this house holds a story, a memory, a piece of our lives. And he suddenly understood, what was at stake was so much more than just walls and a roof. It was our dignity. Our life's work. Our right to decide what belonged to us. That night, While I slept so uneasily beside him, my Walter lay wide awake, planning his next steps. He didn't know exactly what Nathan and the Ledesmas had in mind, but he was sure they wouldn't give up so easily. And neither would he. He remembered an old friend, Captain Arriaga, who now worked for the city police. And he also thought of a young lawyer, Jessica Castana, who had helped one of his driver friends with a similar problem. He would contact them first thing in the morning. This war, it was just beginning. Walter barely slept a wink that night. While I breathed restlessly beside him, his head just wouldn't stop spinning, replaying what had happened over and over. The image of our son toasting with his in-laws while I, his wife, cried outside, he said it burned inside him like acid. He got up before dawn and made coffee. With the hot cup in his hands, sitting at our little kitchen table, he picked up his cell phone and called Roger. "Walter?" Roger answered, his voice all sleepy. "What's wrong?" "It's barely 5. I need a favor, my friend. Can you cover for me today? I have to take care of some urgent business." "Of course, Walter," he said after a brief silence. "Is everything okay with Mrs. Beatrice?" "I'll tell you later," Walter replied, not wanting to get into it. "I owe you one, Roger." After he hung up, I put my hands on his shoulders. I hadn't made a sound getting up. "Where are you going so early?" I asked, pouring myself some coffee. "To make sure no one takes what's ours," he replied, taking my hand. "Trust me, my love." I looked at him so intently, with these old eyes that, after 42 years, can still read his every thought. "Be careful, Walter," I said finally. "I know that look of yours." He smiled at me, though I knew inside he felt that mix of anger and determination he hadn't felt in many years. "I'm always careful," he assured me, getting up to give me a kiss. "But this time, I'm not going to stand by and do nothing." His first stop was the municipal police station. The building, a single story with peeling paint, was just beginning to show signs of life when he arrived. A couple of young officers were getting off their shift, their eyes red from the night watch. "Mr. Walter." He heard a familiar voice behind him. He turned, and there was Captain Arriaga. They had grown up together in the same neighborhood, though their paths diverged when Martin entered the police academy and Walter went into construction. Life brought them back together years later when our kids were in the same school. "Martin, good to see you," Walter said, shaking his hand. "What brings you here so early?" Martin asked, motioning toward his office. "Come on in. I just made coffee." Once inside, Walter told him everything that had happened the day before. Martin's face just hardened as the story unfolded. "I know the Ledesmas," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "Mr. Harold acts like a big-shot businessman, but he has a reputation for taking advantage of people, and what you're telling me about Nathan." He paused. "Sorry to say it, Walter, but your son has always looked for the easy way out." Walter wasn't offended. Martin was just telling the truth. "What can I do, Martin?" Walter asked. "I'm afraid they'll come back and pressure Beatrice when I'm not here." Captain Arriaga rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Legally, I can't do much if they haven't committed a crime," he admitted. "But I can send patrols to cruise by your house more often. And if they try anything, you call me immediately." Walter thanked him, but he knew he needed more than that. He needed legal protection. "Do you know a lawyer named Jessica Castida?" he asked. "Mrs. Castida?" "Sure, she's good. Helps several colleagues with property and inheritance problems. Her office is near the market." After saying goodbye to Martin, Walter headed straight for the lawyer's office. To his surprise, despite how early it was, the lights were on. He knocked on the frosted glass door, and a young voice invited him in. Jessica Castida turned out to be a much younger woman than he expected, probably in her 30s. She wore a simple but formal suit, and her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes, behind thin-framed glasses, studied him with curiosity. "How can I help you?" she asked, pointing to a chair in front of her desk. Walter told her our situation without leaving out any details. She listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes in a legal pad. When he finished, she took off her glasses and sighed. "Mr. Walter, what you're describing is unfortunately very common," she said. "Children or relatives pressuring seniors to transfer their assets, sometimes with deception, sometimes with veiled threats. What can I do to protect us?" "Several things," she replied, putting her glasses back on. "First, we need to review your paperwork. Do you have a will?" "I made one about 10 years ago," Walter admitted. "Nathan is our only son, so we left him as the sole heir." "We need to change that immediately," she said firmly. "And we need to revoke any power of attorney your son might have." "Power of attorney?" Walter said. "We haven't given him any power of attorney." The lawyer looked at him so intently. "Are you completely sure?" "Sometimes these documents are signed without fully understanding their implications. Your wife, Mrs. Beatrice, might have signed something without your knowledge." A chill ran down my husband's spine. I had told him I didn't sign anything yesterday, but what about before? "I don't know for sure," he admitted. "Let's do this," Jessica proposed, picking up her phone. "I know all the notaries in town. I'll ask them to verify if there's any power of attorney in your son's or daughter-in-law's name. In the meantime, let's prepare a revocation of any existing power of attorney and a new will." For the next 2 hours, Jessica drafted several documents while Walter provided her with all the necessary information about our assets. Besides the house, we had our modest savings and a small plot of land on the outskirts that we bought years ago for retirement. "Mr. Walter, I recommend putting the house in a trust," she told him as she finished typing. "It's a legal structure that will protect the property even after you're gone, ensuring your wife, Beatrice, can continue to live there for life, and after that, you can establish who inherits under what conditions, or even donate it to a cause you both value. The important thing is that no one can pressure you to transfer it." Just then, the phone rang, interrupting them. Jessica answered, and her expression turned so serious as she listened. When she hung up, she looked at Walter gravely. "We have a problem, Mr. Walter. According to Mr. Lopez, the notary, a general power of attorney was registered 6 months ago, in favor of your son, Nathan, signed by Mrs. Beatrice." Walter said he felt the floor move right beneath his feet. "That's impossible," he protested. "Beatrice would never do that without consulting me. The notary says the signature looks authentic, but..." She paused. "Mr. Walter, does your wife sign all her own documents, or do you sometimes sign for her?" The question caught him off guard, but he understood its implication. "Sometimes I sign for her." "Yes," he admitted. "Routine documents, when she's busy or not feeling well. We have very similar signatures." Jessica nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "Is it possible someone forged her signature, or that they had her sign something making her believe it was another document?" she said. "In any case, we are going to revoke that power of attorney immediately and file a complaint for possible forgery." They spent the rest of the morning going from one notary's office to another, formalizing the revocation of the power of attorney and establishing the trust for our house. They also changed the will, stating clearly that any attempt at coercion or manipulation would automatically disqualify Nathan as an heir. It was almost noon when they finished. Before saying goodbye, Jessica gave Walter one last piece of advice. "Mr. Walter, you need to get proof of what your son and the Ledesmas are trying to do. If they pressure you again, record the conversation. We're in a one-party consent state, which means only one person needs to consent for the recording to be legal, and that person can be you." She showed him how to set up the recording app on his cell phone and how to activate it discreetly. Then she handed him a folder with copies of all the documents they had processed. "Keep these in a safe place, and always carry a copy with you when you leave the house," she recommended. "And if you need anything, call me anytime." Walter left that office feeling stronger, he told me, but also sadder than he'd ever been in his life. "I never imagined, in all my years, that my Walter would have to legally protect himself from our own son." After he left the lawyer's office, he was driving home when his cell phone rang. It was me. I was the one who had to call him, my voice just shaking. Walter, I said, Nathan just called. He says he's coming over with Mr. Harold. That they have something important to show us. Don't open the door for them, Beatrice, Walter instructed me, his voice suddenly hard. I'm on my way now. I already told them I'm not alone, I whispered into the phone. I told them Mr. S is here fixing the lock. I don't know where the lie came from, but Mr. S is our neighborhood locksmith, a burly man respected by everyone, and the name just popped into my head. Walter told me later he actually smiled, despite the situation. Well thought, my love, he said. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He sped up as much as he could. When he got to our street, he saw them. Nathan's truck parked right in front of our door, and next to it, Mr. Harold's black Honda Civic. Walter said his pulse quickened. Before he even got out of the car, he remembered Jessica's advice and activated the recording app on his cell phone, tucking it into his shirt pocket. When he walked in, I was standing by the kitchen, trying my best not to shake. Nathan and Mr. Harold were sitting at our kitchen table with several papers spread out in front of them. Thank heavens, Amber and Mrs. Miriam weren't with them this time. Dad, good thing you're here, Nathan said, standing up. I was just explaining to Mom that we're worried about you. Worried? Walter asked, walking over to my side and taking my hand. About what exactly? Mr. Harold cleared his throat. Mr. Walter, I think you misunderstood us yesterday. We don't want to take anything from you. On the contrary, we want to protect you. Protect us from what? Walter insisted. Nathan exchanged a look with Mr. Harold before answering. Dad, you don't know this, but there are people who take advantage of the elderly. Scammers, abusive neighbors. He paused, so dramatic. Even the government can seize properties if they aren't properly protected legally. It was such a blatant lie, I nearly gasped, but Walter just stood there, calm as you please. He wanted to see how far they would go. And how exactly are you going to protect us? Mr. Harold pushed some papers toward my husband. It's very simple. If the house is in the name of a corporation that we control, no one can touch it. You will continue to live here, of course, but legally, you will be safer. Walter took the papers and glanced over them. He told me later it was a sales contract disguised as asset protection, with clauses so abusive they would make a loan shark blush. And you prepared this, Mr. Harold? Walter asked, keeping his voice perfectly neutral. A lawyer friend of mine, he replied proudly. He's very good. He manages the assets of several important families in our state. I see, Walter said, leaving the papers on the table. And my son agrees with this completely? Dad, Nathan chimed in, it's for the good of everyone. Besides, Mr. Harold has offered me a position in his company if we finalize this arrangement, an important position with a good salary. And there it was. The real reason. Our son was willing to strip us of our home, all for a job with his father-in-law. Nathan, son, Walter said, measuring each word. How long have you been out of work? His face darkened. I'm not out of work, Dad. I'm between jobs. Besides, I've been helping Mr. Harold with some business. What business exactly? Walter pressed. Mr. Harold intervened before Nathan could answer. Real estate projects mainly, he said vaguely. There's a lot of potential in this town, especially in areas like this that are starting to increase in value. I saw Walter's eyes narrow. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. They didn't just want our house. They were planning to eventually sell it to developers. I understand perfectly, Walter said, and his conciliatory tone surprised even me. You're right. We have to protect the family assets. I saw a flash of triumph in Mr. Harold's eyes, and Nathan visibly relaxed. I'm glad you understand, Dad, my son said, smiling for the first time. Of course, Walter continued. In fact, I just came from doing exactly that. Legally protecting what's ours. He pulled out the folder Jessica, our new lawyer, had given him and took out some of the documents. "This morning," Walter explained, "Beatrice and I put our house into an irrevocable trust. And we also revoked the power of attorney that my wife supposedly gave to Nathan 6 months ago." Nathan's smile just vanished. Mr. Harold stiffened. "What have you done?" my son asked, his voice full of disbelief. "What I had to do," Walter replied firmly. "Protect what's ours. Oh, and by the way, we also filed a complaint for possible signature forgery. Miss Castana is handling everything." Mr. Harold stood up so fast he nearly knocked his chair over, gathering his papers. "I don't think you're thinking clearly, Mr. Walter," he said, trying to maintain his friendly tone, but there was a note of threat in his voice. "We could have reached an agreement beneficial to everyone." "There is no agreement that involves taking our house that could be beneficial to everyone," Walter replied, firm as a rock. "And now I'm going to ask you to leave my property." Nathan looked at his father with a mix of anger and surprise. "Dad, you're making a serious mistake. Mr. Harold is just trying to help us." "No, Nathan, you're the one making the mistake," Walter told him, and I could hear the deep sadness in his voice. "And I hope one day you realize it." "This isn't over, Mr. Walter," Harold threatened as he headed for the door. "I have friends everywhere, and your little lawyer is going to find that out soon." "Your threats are recorded, Mr. Harold," Walter informed him, taking his cell phone out of his shirt pocket. "Just like this entire conversation. Miss Castana suggested I gather evidence, and that's exactly what I've done." Mr. Harold turned pale. Nathan just looked dumbfounded. "We'll see you in court if necessary," Walter added. "But I assure you, you will not succeed in taking away what we've built with so much effort." Without another word, Mr. Harold left the house. Nathan stayed for a moment, looking at his father with an expression I couldn't decipher. "I never thought you would distrust me like this," he said finally. "I'm your son. And precisely because you are my son, it hurts me what you're doing," Walter replied. "But I'm not going to allow it, Nathan. For your own good, and for ours." When they finally left, I just came over and hugged Walter tightly. "Oh, Walter, I was so scared," I murmured against his chest. "When they called, I thought they were coming with papers I had signed without realizing it." "Everything is fine now, my love," he reassured me. "They can't do anything to us." But as he held me, Walter looked out the window. He told me he saw Nathan and Mr. Harold talking heatedly next to their vehicles. Our son was gesturing angrily, and his father-in-law seemed to be giving him instructions. My husband was certain that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. That very night, Walter called Mr. S., the locksmith I had invented earlier in my lie. Walter had known him for years. They'd worked together on several construction sites when Walter was still a mason. "Change all the locks? Right now?" Mr. S. asked, surprised, when Walter explained what he needed. "Yes, Mr. S." There was a moment of silence. "Problems with the kid?" he finally asked. Walter wasn't surprised he guessed. In neighborhoods like ours, rumors spread faster than water. "Something like that," Walter admitted. "I'll explain when you get here." An hour later, Mr. S. was at our door with his toolbox. While he worked on the main lock, Walter told him what had happened, leaving out only the most painful details. "It's not the first case I've seen, Mr. Walter," he commented as he dismantled the door's mechanism. "Last month, I changed the locks for Mrs. Herman because her nephew stole her pension. Twice. And what happened? Well, the kid came in a rage, threatening to break down the door. I had to call the police," he said, adjusting a piece. "He hasn't been back since." While Mr. S. continued to work, I made some coffee. When we sat at the small kitchen table, I gripped Walter's hand tightly. "Walter, do you think Nathan will try to force his way in?" I asked, worry etched on my face. Before Walter could answer, Mr. S. spoke up from the doorway. "Don't you worry, Mrs. Beatrice. These new locks are impossible to force. And besides," he said, pulling what looked like small, lighter-sized cameras from his pocket, I'm going to install these at the entrance and in the backyard. They're security cameras that connect to your cell phone. If anyone tries to get in, it sends you an alert. Where did you get those, Mr. S? Walter asked, surprised. A buddy of mine imports them. I'll leave them as part of the job. We accepted gratefully. Any extra security measure was welcome. Mr. S finished around 10 at night. He handed Walter 3 new sets of keys. One for each of you, and keep the third one well hidden, just in case, he recommended. And Mr. Walter, if you need anything else, anything at all, just call me. Walter paid him what we agreed on, plus extra for the urgency and the cameras. When he left, Walter and I sat in the living room, each lost in our own thoughts. Do you really think Nathan would try to enter without permission? I finally asked, my voice breaking. Walter sighed deeply. It pained him to even consider it, but after what he'd seen, he couldn't trust our son. I don't know, my love, he answered honestly, but it's better to be safe. That night, while I slept restlessly, Walter stayed up. He reviewed the recording he had made of the conversation with Nathan and Mr. Harold over and over. He emailed it to Jessica Castita and also saved it to the cloud, just as she had taught him. The next day, Walter decided to go to work as usual. We needed to maintain our routine, and Lord knows, we needed the money. If life had taught us anything, it was that legal battles, even just ones, always cost money. He said it was a quiet day at work. He picked up several tourists, took a family to the main beach. By the time he got back to our town, it was already getting dark. As he approached home, he told me he noticed something strange. There were 2 vehicles he didn't recognize parked nearby. Not Nathan's truck, not Mr. Harold's Honda, but a white Volkswagen and a red Jeep. A chill ran down his spine. He parked half a block away and approached cautiously. Just then, his phone vibrated. It was a notification from the cameras Mr. S had installed. There was movement at the front door. He opened the app, and what he saw froze his blood. It was Amber, Nathan's wife, at our door, banging on it insistently. Next to her were a man and a woman he didn't recognize. The woman was carrying a briefcase that looked like it held documents. He quickly called home. I answered on the second ring, my heart in my throat. Walter, where are you? I asked, my voice anxious. I'm near the house. I see Amber is at the door with more people. Who are they? Oh, Walter, I said, my voice breaking. She says it's a social worker, and a doctor, that they're here to evaluate our mental capacity to handle our affairs. She says Nathan is worried about us. Rage washed over my husband. So that was their new strategy. Try to declare us incompetent. Don't open the door for them, Beatrice. No matter what, he told me firmly. And call Miss Castana right now. The number is in the notebook by the phone. I already did, Walter, I told him. She told me not to let them in and that she's on her way. Walter told me later he smiled, even then. My Walter, always so proud when I'm quick on my feet. Well done, my love. I'm going to call Captain Arriaga, too. I'll be there in 5 minutes. He hung up and immediately dialed Martin's number. To his relief, Martin answered right away. Martin, there are people at my house trying to force their way in. They claim to be a social worker and a doctor. I think my son is behind this. I'm on my way right now, Martin said. Don't do anything until I get there. But Walter couldn't just wait. He moved closer, close enough to see, staying hidden behind a tree on the corner. Amber was still banging on the door, harder each time. Mrs. Beatrice, we know you're in there, she shouted. We just want to help you. If you don't open up, we'll have to call the authorities. It was then Walter noticed the man was filming everything with his cell phone. They were creating evidence that we weren't cooperating, to use against us later. He couldn't hold back. He stepped out from his hiding place and approached with firm steps. Can someone tell me what you're doing on my property? He asked, his voice loud and clear. The three of them turned, surprised. Amber recovered quickly and put on her best fake smile. "Mr. Walter, good thing you're here. I'd like you to meet Miss Monica Vega, a social worker, and Dr. Ramirez. They're here to do a routine evaluation." "Routine evaluation?" Walter repeated, incredulous. "Ordered by whom?" "Because neither my wife nor I have requested such a thing." The supposed social worker stepped forward. She was a woman in her 40s, with a formal suit and a serious expression. "Mr. Walter, your son Nathan has expressed concern for your well-being. As part of the protocol, we must conduct an evaluation." "What government agency are you from?" Walter interrupted, noticing she wasn't wearing any visible identification. The woman seemed taken aback. "We work with a private assistance program," she replied vaguely. "Your son hired us to." "Then you have no legal authority to be here," Walter concluded. "I'm going to ask you to leave my property immediately." The supposed doctor intervened then. "Mr. Walter, we understand your concern, but it's for your own good. We just want to verify that both you and your wife are in a condition to manage your affairs. It's standard procedure for people your age." Indignation was consuming my husband, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Doctor, what did you say your name was?" "Ramirez." "Dr. Philip Ramirez," he replied. "And your medical license, Dr. Ramirez?" "I'd like to see it. If you don't mind." The man became visibly nervous. I have it in the car." "I could." "That won't be necessary." A firm voice interrupted from behind Walter. He turned to see Jessica Castida approaching with purpose, followed closely by Captain Arriaga and another police officer. "Miss Vega, Dr. Ramirez," Jessica said, in a tone that made it clear she knew their identities. "I'm afraid you are committing several crimes, including impersonating public officials and harassment." The fake social worker lost all her composure. "We were just..." "Save the explanations," Jessica cut her off. "You can give them at the station, when you present your professional credentials, which, by the way, I highly doubt you have." Captain Arriaga approached the three visitors. "I'm going to need you to accompany me to verify your identities," he said with authority. "And I'm going to have to temporarily confiscate that phone you were recording with without consent." Amber looked like she was about to protest, but something in Martin's expression made her change her mind. The three of them followed the officers to the patrol car. Jessica walked over to Walter. "Mr. Walter, this is exactly what I warned you about. They are looking for any way to declare you incompetent to manage your assets." "Who are those people really?" Walter asked. "The woman," Jessica said, "works for a law firm known for shady inheritance cases." "The man?" "I'm not sure, but I doubt he's a doctor. And as for your daughter-in-law, she knows exactly what she's doing." We went into the house. I was visibly shaken, but firm. After making sure I was okay, we sat in the living room to discuss the next steps. "What they tried today is just the beginning," Jessica explained. "They will surely try again, maybe with real officials next time. We need to legally establish that you are in full possession of your mental faculties." "How do we do that?" I asked. "First thing tomorrow, I'll take you to a geriatric doctor and a forensic psychologist for evaluations," Jessica replied. "These reports will be crucial if they try to question your capacity in court." Walter nodded. "And what about the forged power of attorney?" "I've already filed the formal complaint," she said. "Mr. Lopez, the notary, is cooperating. He says he vaguely remembers you, Mrs. Beatrice, but admits he didn't verify your identity with the required rigor." Then Jessica took some papers from her briefcase. "In addition to the trust, I recommend we do this. It's an advance directive. Basically, you designate someone you trust to make decisions for you in the event you truly do lose capacity in the future. This way, you ensure that no matter what, Nathan or the Ledesmas cannot control your affairs." "And who could we designate?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Nathan is our only son." The question hung in the air, heavy and painful. It was true. Other than Nathan, we had no close relatives. Think of trusted friends, Jessica suggested gently. People who have proven their loyalty. Walter immediately thought of Roger, his fellow driver. I have someone in mind, he said finally. But I need to talk to him first. When Jessica left, Walter and I sat in silence. Finally, I spoke. Walter. I never thought it would come to this, I said, with tears in my eyes. Legally protecting ourselves from our own son. He held me tightly, feeling my pain as if it were his own. Me neither, my love, he admitted. But we have no choice. Nathan has made his decision, and we have to protect ourselves. How did we get here? I wondered aloud. We raised him as best we could. We gave him values. It's not your fault or mine, Walter assured me. Nathan chose his path when he met the Ledesmas. Or maybe, I murmured, they just brought something to the surface that was already there. Walter had no answer for that. He could only hold me tighter as the evening shadows lengthened in our small living room. The next day, just as Jessica had planned, we went to see the geriatrician and the forensic psychologist. Both professionals were thorough, asking us questions about our daily lives, our finances, our memory. To my relief, both concluded that we were in perfect mental condition. It's clear, the psychologist, a kind-looking older man, told us, that you are both not only lucid, but perfectly capable of understanding complex situations and making informed decisions. I will include that in my report. On the way home, Walter stopped at the spot where the ride-share drivers used to gather. He needed to talk to Roger. He found him drinking coffee, leaning against his car. Walter, Roger greeted him. How's everything going? Did you resolve your issue? More or less, Walter replied, sitting next to him. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Walter told him everything, from the first scene with Nathan and his in-laws to the forced evaluation attempt the day before. Roger listened intently, his expression changing from surprise to outrage. I can't believe it, Walter, he said. Your own son. Doing this for a house? It's not just the house, Roger. It's the easy money. It's the control, Walter sighed. He then explained about the advance directive and what it entailed. To my husband's surprise, Roger didn't hesitate for a second. Of course, I'll accept, Walter. It would be an honor for you to trust me with something like that. You and Mrs. Beatrice have been like family to me ever since my wife passed away. Walter felt a lump in his throat. The loyalty of a true friend in times like these, it was invaluable. Thank you, Roger. You don't know what this means to us. He returned home with a mix of contradictory emotions. So much sadness about our son, but so much gratitude for having people like Jessica, Martin, and Roger. When he got home, I was in the kitchen preparing lunch. He told me later there was something different about me, a new determination he hadn't seen in days. How did it go with Roger? I asked, as I chopped vegetables with precision. He accepted without hesitation, Walter replied, washing his hands in the sink. He says it's an honor for him. I nodded, as if I had never doubted the answer. Good. Then tomorrow we'll call the lawyer to prepare the document, I said firmly. And Walter. I've been thinking. Maybe we should consider changing the locks on the plot of land, too. He was surprised by my suggestion, but he knew I was right. The small plot of land we had bought on the outskirts for our retirement could also be in their sights. You're right, he agreed. I'll call Mr. S to take care of that, too. And one more thing, Walter, I said, setting the knife aside and looking at him directly. I want to learn how to use the cell phone better. How to use those security apps, how to record conversations, all of it. I don't want to always depend on you to protect us. Walter told me later that my determination filled him with pride and love. He's always said I'm stronger than people assume. I'll teach you everything I know, Beatrice, he promised, hugging me. And what I don't know, we'll learn together. That afternoon, as Walter patiently showed me how to use the different security apps on my phone, I felt something changing within us. The pain of Nathan's betrayal was still there, sharp and deep, like a splinter in the heart. But alongside it, a fierce determination was growing, a resolve not to be beaten, to protect what we had worked so hard to build throughout our lives. We knew the battle was just beginning. Nathan and the Ledesmas surely had more tricks up their sleeves, but we were no longer unprepared. We were armed with legal knowledge, with evidence, with faithful allies, and above all, with the certainty that what we were defending was just and ours. Night was falling when Walter received a message from Miss Jessica. It was a notification that the court had accepted our complaint for signature forgery, and that a formal investigation would soon begin. It was a small victory, but it gave us hope. As Walter watched me practicing with my new phone, he told me later that he smiled to himself. The Ledesmas and Nathan thought we were two helpless old people, easy to manipulate and deceive. How wrong they were. They had barely seen what we were capable of. The following weeks passed in a tense calm. We heard nothing from Nathan or the Ledesmas, which, far from reassuring us, kept us in a constant state of alert. As Captain Arriaga told Walter, when your enemy is quiet, that's when you should be most worried. We continued with our daily routine. Walter left early for work, picking up passengers at the airport or taking tourists to the beaches. I continued with my usual activities, but now I always carried my cell phone with me, recording any suspicious interaction, just as Walter had taught me. One afternoon, while Walter was waiting for passengers at the airport, he received a call from Jessica Castida. "Mr. Walter, we have news," she said, getting straight to the point. "The notary, Mr. Lopez, has formally admitted that the signature on the power of attorney was not properly verified. Furthermore, we've gotten a handwriting expert to confirm that it does not match Mrs. Beatrice's authentic signature." Walter told me he felt an immense relief wash over him. So, the power of attorney is definitively nullified. Exactly. And there's more, Jessica continued. The forgery complaint is moving forward. The judge has summoned Nathan to testify next week. This was good news, but also worrying. If Nathan was legally cornered, what would he try now? "Do you think they'll try something else?" Walter asked. There was a brief silence. "Mr. Walter, people like the Ledesmas don't give up easily," she replied cautiously. "They've invested time and resources in this. They are probably planning their next move." After hanging up, Walter called me to tell me the news. But I didn't answer. That wasn't like me, especially now that I was so vigilant with my phone. He called again. Nothing. A feeling of alarm began to grow inside him. He canceled the ride he was waiting for and drove at full speed toward home. During the drive, he tried calling me several more times, but I still didn't answer. He also called Mr. S., Roger, even Captain Arriaga, but none of them had seen me that day. As he turned onto our street, he saw something that froze his blood. Nathan's truck was parked in front of our house, and next to it, another vehicle he didn't recognize. He parked at a distance and approached cautiously. Just then, his phone vibrated. It was an alert from the security cameras. He opened the app and saw images of Nathan, Amber, and another person he didn't know entering our house. I was with them, but something didn't seem right. Walter said I was moving slowly. He immediately called Captain Arriaga. "Martin, they're in my house. Nathan and other people. Something's not right with Beatrice." "I'm on my way," Martin responded without hesitation. "Don't go in alone, Walter. Wait for me." But my husband couldn't just wait. He told me he was terrified I was in danger. He moved toward the house, his heart pounding. Before reaching the door, he decided to check the side window, where he could see part of the living room without being seen. What he witnessed left him frozen. I was sitting on the sofa with a lost, vacant look in my eyes, while a man in a white coat took my blood pressure. Amber was filming everything with her cell phone, and Nathan was talking animatedly, as if explaining something. Walter couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was clear they were creating some kind of evidence about my health. Rage flooded him as he saw how I seemed unable to defend myself. Had they given me something? Was I medicated against my will? He couldn't wait any longer. He took his own cell phone, activated the video recording, and headed for the front door. To his surprise, it wasn't locked. He entered quietly. "As you can see," Nathan was saying to the camera Amber was holding, "my mother is in no condition to make important decisions. She needs constant supervision." "And Walter's here," my husband interrupted, his voice shaking with fury. The three of them spun around, surprised by his entrance. The man in the white coat turned pale and moved away from me. When I saw Walter, I tried to stand up, but I was so disoriented. "Dad," Nathan said, quickly recovering from the surprise. "We weren't expecting you so early. We're doing a medical evaluation on Mom. She's been very confused lately." "Confused?" Walter repeated, approaching me and taking my hand. It was cold and trembling slightly. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing, Mr. Walter," the man in the white coat intervened, visibly nervous. "I just gave her a mild sedative to calm her anxiety. She was very agitated when we arrived." "A sedative? Without her consent?" Walter's voice rose dangerously. "And who are you? A real doctor this time?" The man stammered something unintelligible, while Amber continued to film the entire scene. "Turn off that camera," Walter ordered her. "What you are doing is illegal." "It's for everyone's protection," she replied, not stopping the recording. "To document Mrs. Beatrice's condition." It was then I spoke, my voice weak, but clear. "They tricked me, Walter," I said, squeezing his hand. "They said they were bringing news about you, that you had been in an accident. When I opened the door, they forced me to take some pills." Rage blinded my husband for an instant. He advanced on Nathan, who instinctively recoiled. "Do you realize what you've done?" Walter said, restraining himself. "This is assault. It's elder abuse. It's breaking and entering. We're just trying to help." Nathan insisted, though his voice no longer sounded so confident. "Mom needs attention. You don't see how she is because you're out all day working." "Enough." Walter cut him off. "I want all three of you out of my house right now. And you," he turned to the supposed doctor, "tell me exactly what you gave my wife." The man, growing more nervous, took a bottle of pills from his pocket. "It's just a mild anti-anxiety pill. It won't cause any harm. The effect will wear off in a few hours." Walter took the bottle and pocketed it. "It would be important evidence." "Out of my house. Now," he repeated. But Nathan didn't move. "We're not leaving. We're going to wait for the competent authorities to arrive to assess the situation." "What authorities?" Walter asked, feeling a chill. "We called social services before we came," Nathan explained with a triumphant smile. "We explained our concern about the mental state of you two. They should be here any minute." So that was their play. Create a crisis situation so the authorities would find them, helping supposedly incapacitated parents. Walter was about to answer when he heard vehicles parking in front of the house. For a moment, he feared it really was social services. But then he saw Captain Arriaga's patrol car out the window. And next to it, another vehicle from which Jessica Castillo was getting out. "Looks like your authorities just arrived," Walter told Nathan, feeling immense relief. A minute later, Captain Arriaga entered the house, followed by another officer and Jessica. The lawyer immediately ran to me. "Mrs. Beatrice, are you all right?" she asked, kneeling in front of me. "They gave me something. I feel dizzy," I replied. Jessica turned to the man in the white coat, who now looked like he wanted to disappear. "Did you administer medication to her without her consent?" she asked in a sharp tone. "Are you aware that constitutes a serious crime?" Meanwhile, Captain Arriaga approached Nathan and Amber. "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me to the station to make some statements," he said with authority. "There are several potential crimes here. Breaking and entering. Administering substances without consent. We haven't impersonated anyone." Amber protested. We're just helping elderly people who clearly can't take care of themselves. Elderly people who can't take care of themselves? Jessica repeated, standing up. I have medical and psychological reports in my briefcase from 2 weeks ago certifying that both Mr. Walter and Mrs. Beatrice are in perfect mental condition. Reports prepared by accredited professionals. Not by. She looked disdainfully at the man in the white coat, unidentified individuals who drug people against their will. The fake doctor, seeing the situation getting worse, decided to confess. I didn't want to be part of this, he said, his voice trembling. They paid me to play this part. To pretend I was a doctor and say the lady was confused. I'm not a doctor. I'm an actor. I work in local commercials. Nathan looked at him with fury. Shut up, you idiot, he shouted. But it was too late. The man, scared, kept talking. They gave me a script. They told me exactly what to say, what to do. They promised me there would be no legal consequences, that it was just a family intervention. Captain Arriaga took out his handcuffs. All of you are coming with me to make a statement. Then we'll decide on the charges. It was then that Nathan, seeing himself cornered, completely changed his attitude. His face transformed, showing a desperation Walter had never seen in him. Dad, please, he pleaded, approaching Walter. You have to understand. Mr. Harold got me into this. He told me if we didn't get the house, he would fire me, take everything from me. I owe him a lot of money. Dad, I'm desperate. Walter looked at him with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. And your solution was to try and take away the only thing we have? To drug your mother? To try and declare us incompetent? I didn't think it would go this far, he said, with tears in his eyes. Mr. Harold kept pressuring me. He said if I didn't get the house, he would make my life impossible. That he knows people, that he can ruin me. Nathan, Captain Arriaga interrupted him. You can declare all of that formally at the station. Let's go. I watched as they handcuffed my son, our son, and led him out of the house along with Amber and the fake doctor. We never imagined it would come to this. Jessica stayed with us while a real doctor, called by Captain Arriaga, examined me. Fortunately, the sedative they had given me was relatively harmless, and the effects were beginning to wear off. Mr. Walter, Jessica said to my husband as we waited in the kitchen. The situation has become very complicated for Nathan and the Ledesmas. This goes beyond a family dispute. They have committed serious crimes. Walter nodded, feeling an enormous weight on his shoulders. What will happen now? It depends partly on you, she replied. You can press formal charges for all the crimes committed, which would likely result in prison sentences, especially for Nathan and the Ledesmas, who orchestrated all of this. The thought of seeing our son in prison, as furious as Walter was with him, it broke both our souls. And if we don't press charges? Jessica looked at him with understanding. That's also an option. But I'm afraid that if there are no serious consequences, they might try again in the future. People like the Ledesmas don't stop easily. Walter spent a sleepless night, sitting by the bed where I slept, now fully recovered from the sedative. As he watched me breathe peacefully, he reflected on everything that had happened and what we should do. The next morning, after breakfast and a long, quiet talk, we made a decision. We called Jessica and asked her to accompany us to the station. Captain Arriaga was waiting for us. We've decided how to proceed, Walter told Martin and Jessica when we sat down in his office. We don't want Nathan to go to prison. Jessica nodded sympathetically. I understand your feelings, Mr. Walter. But. However, Walter interrupted her, we don't want this to go without consequences either. I want Nathan to understand the gravity of what he did, to learn his lesson. What exactly are you proposing? The captain asked. I took Walter's hand and looked at him, giving him the strength to continue. We want to make a deal, Walter explained. Nathan must completely distance himself from the Ledesmas, divorce Amber if necessary, get an honest job, and support himself. And as long as he demonstrates that he is changing, that he is taking responsibility for his life. We will not press charges for what happened yesterday. And the Ledesmas? Jessica asked. It was my turn. We do want to proceed legally against them, I affirmed firmly. They are the real culprits in all of this. They manipulated our son. They pressured him. They turned him into what he is now. Jessica and Captain Arriaga exchanged glances. I can arrange a meeting with the DA's office, Jessica said finally. But we will need Nathan to cooperate, to testify against the Ledesmas. Without his testimony, it will be difficult to prosecute them effectively. I'll talk to him, Walter said. I'll explain the situation. An hour later, Walter was sitting across from Nathan in a small room at the station. He told me Nathan looked haggard, with deep dark circles under his eyes and an expression of total defeat. Dad, he began as soon as he saw him. Listen to me carefully, Nathan, Walter interrupted. Your mother and I have decided not to press charges against you, under certain conditions. Walter explained in detail what we had agreed upon, his separation from the Ledesmas, the need to find an honest job, and, most importantly, Walter added, we need you to testify. To tell everything you know about the Ledesmas, about how they pressured you, about their plans for our house. Everything. Nathan looked at Walter with a mixture of surprise and relief. I'm not going to jail. No. If you meet these conditions, Walter replied. But understand something, Nathan. This is your last chance. If you ever try anything like this again, if you betray us again, there will be no more mercy. Walter watched as tears began to run down our son's face. I'm so sorry, Dad, he said, his voice breaking. I got carried away. Mr. Harold promised me so much, an important job, money, recognition, everything I always wanted without really having to work for it. That's the root of the problem, son, Walter said, feeling a mixture of sadness and compassion. You've always looked for the easy way out. But life doesn't work that way. What's gained without effort isn't valued. Nathan nodded slowly, as if he finally understood. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything, he promised. I'll tell them how it was Mr. Harold who planned everything from the beginning. How he pressured me. How they forged Mom's signature. Good, Walter said, getting up to leave. Miss Castana will be here soon to take your formal statement. When Walter was about to leave, Nathan called out to him. Dad, he said, his voice trembling. Do you think, you and Mom, will ever be able to forgive me? Walter stopped at the door without turning to look at him. Forgiveness is earned, Nathan. With actions, not with words, he replied. Show us you've changed. Then we'll talk about forgiveness. The following weeks were intense. With Nathan's testimony and the evidence we had gathered, the DA's office was able to prosecute the Ledesmas for multiple crimes, forgery of documents, attempted fraud, coercion, and accessory to administering substances without consent, among others. Nathan, just as he had promised, completely distanced himself from them. He moved into a small apartment on the other side of town and, with Roger's help, got a job as an administrative assistant at the transport cooperative. Amber, seeing her husband testify against her parents, immediately filed for divorce and returned to her family's home. The rumors were that Mr. Harold had lost several important contracts after his reputation was tarnished by the court case. Walter and I continued with our lives, more united than ever after this ordeal. The house, now protected by the trust we had established, continued to be our refuge, the symbol of a lifetime of honest work and sacrifice. Months passed before we agreed to see Nathan again. It was a brief, awkward meeting in a neutral coffee shop. He told us about his job, about how he was learning to stand on his own 2 feet for the first time in his adult life. It's not easy, he admitted. But I feel like I'm finally doing the right thing. There was no big emotional reconciliation, no movie-like hugs. Just a tentative, fragile beginning of rebuilding. The road to forgiveness would be long and difficult. Over time, the visits became more frequent. Nathan never lived with us again. He never fully regained our trust. But little by little, he began to show with actions, not words, that he had learned his lesson, that he understood that an inheritance is not a right, but something earned with years of character and action. As for the Ledesmas, justice ran its course. They didn't receive prison sentences, but they did get substantial fines and legal restrictions that significantly limited their business activities. One afternoon, while Walter and I were drinking coffee on our small porch, watching the sunset over our town, I took his hand and looked at him with those eyes that, after more than 4 decades together, are still my anchor. "You know, Walter," I said, "sometimes I think all this had to happen. Maybe Nathan needed to hit rock bottom to find his way." "Maybe," he replied, gently squeezing my hand. "I just regret that we had to suffer so much in the process." "Suffering builds character," I said, with that quiet wisdom that always seemed to define him, but that I suppose I'd found in myself, too. "The important thing is that in the end, we all learned something." "Nathan learned about consequences and responsibility," Walter completed. "And we learned that we are stronger than we thought." I nodded, resting my head on his shoulder. "And that what we built together, no one can take away from us. Not even our own sun." The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. Our house, modest but decent, stood firm behind us, a silent witness to a shared lifetime of struggles and triumphs, of disappointments and renewed hopes. And as I held Walter, I understood that that was what truly mattered. Not the walls, not the deed, but what we had built together. A life of honesty, of hard work, of unbreakable love. That was our true legacy, one that no one, not even those closest to us, could ever take away.